feel the tiredness after going home to class. I feel tired for some reason.
Yeah. And you want to teach?
Yeah, because
No, I'm just messing.
it gives me more like energy walking, and
I know that's the difference. So while I'm here, I'm moving, I'm talking, things are happening.
when you're sitting alone, you're just like,
Yep. All right, perfect. So we're now live, and today we have real estate contracts. So yesterday, good morning, Shaisha. Sorry, at home. Yesterday we talked about listings, right? And when we're dealing with listings, we're dealing with seller or buyer? Seller. Because a listing is where we market the property. So we're not dealing with buyers at all. We're just listing. You got it? Now, real estate contract's a little bit different. For a real estate contract to occur, there must be a buyer. Okay? Because for a real estate contract to occur, that means there's somebody willing to buy that property that was listed. Okay? But both parties actually participate here. It's mainly when you have a buyer, but both parties participate. So, we're going to start with contract law, and I just want to let you guys know contract law is general. So it will touch real estate briefly in some parts, but right now what we're addressing is general contracts. So, it says brokers and salespeople use many types of contracts and agreements in the course of their business to carry out their responsibilities to sellers, buyers, and the general public. Among these are listing agreements, sales contracts, option agreements, and leases. The general body of the law that governs operations such as agreements is known as contract law. Now, a contract, please highlight, underline, put stars. A contract may be defined as a voluntary agreement between legally competent parties to perform or refrain from performing some legal act supported by legal consideration. Okay? What we're saying here is simple. You cannot be forced into a contract. You got to be 18 years of age, a legally competent party, and of sound mind. Right? There has to be some type of exchange, as we'll talk about in a second, and it has to be for a legal purpose. A contract to kill is not for a legal purpose, is it? A contract to sell drugs is not a legal purpose, right? So these are not valid contracts. A contract needs to be free will, competent parties, and something legal. So with that, we're going to talk about the essential elements of a valid contract. The essential elements of a valid contract. So without these, a contract could not exist. So as I just mentioned, the very first one was competent parties. That means, and I'm going to answer Hamid's question before the class started. That means to enter into a binding contract in New Jersey, a person must be at least 18 years old and of sound mind. Now, Hamid, a married person under 18 is considered an adult. So if the question says that John is 17, married, they are legal adults, therefore they answer as adults. But if it doesn't mention potential marriage or emancipation, right, because that's the way you can get married when you're a minor, it's emancipation, it says persons under 18 may enter into a valid contract, but that contract is voidable, not invalid, voidable by the minor until reasonable time after he or she reaches the age of 18. So let's say I buy a house with my son, I put his name there, he's 13 years old as of the 18th of this month, so is he an adult?
No.
No, but his name is there. He reaches the age of 18, he was like, Poppy, that's what he called. Poppy, this real estate thing, I thought it was for me, because he's learning real estate. I thought it was for me, but it's really not. I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a gamer. I want to be whatever. Right? Can I force him to stay in the contract? No. As soon as he reaches the age of 18, what can he do? Void the contract. So it's not invalid. It's a valid contract. It's just that it's voidable once they reach the age of 18 or so now. You got it? Now, was your question from the end of this chapter?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to answer earlier. You guys weren't here. He's like, I'm sure you remember out of the top of your head, I'm like, we still didn't get there. Why would I answer? And Lila like, he knows. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm not there yet.
I told you
I know the book inside out
Yeah.
and upside down.
Upside down, I was going to say that.
All right. So, competent parties, 18 years of age and a sound mind. Those exemptions are already addressed. Now, offer and acceptance. Offer and acceptance. If I offer, you accept, we have a valid contract. If I offer, you don't accept, is it a contract? No, there must be some type of acceptance. Very simple. So that means that we must have mutual assent. Mutual assent means that we understand there's a meeting of the minds. We both meet in agreement. Our minds are in agreement with all the terms of the contract, every detail of it, and we choose to proceed. Does that make sense? The wording of the contract must express all agreed on terms. It must be clearly understood by the parties. Next, we have consideration. Now, consideration. This is exchange of value. If I give you something in exchange for something, that is called consideration. So, the agreement must be based in good or valuable consideration, and consideration is what the parties promise in the agreements to give to or receive from each other. And consideration, please underline, may consist of legal tender, exchange of value, or love and affection. You guys remember I said that my son owns a property with me? Do you think he paid for it? No. His share was all the love and affection that he gives me. Right? Does that make sense? I could do that. Once my daughters get married, can I give them a house? Am I going to charge? No. Love and affection. You guys understand? Now, the price or amount must be definitely stated and payable in exchange for the deed or right received. This last sentence, I want you to highlight, underline, put stars, arrows, bubbles. We're going to mention a couple times. But in a sales contract, the consideration is the entire purchase price. Meaning, if he sold it for $500,000, it must state $500,000. If he sold it for $1, it must state $1. But that has to be the true sales price. You know how sometimes we buy cars or sell cars and we put zero or gift? Because we don't want to deal with taxes, right? But was that the true value of the sale? No. You guys understand? So in a little bit, we're going to talk about how you have to sign an affidavit. Same thing with the cars. Now they send you a form that says, hey, that car was worth something. Why would you gift it? Please sign the sworn statement that you did gift the car. I know, that happened to me. I received that thing from the state of New Jersey. I'm like, I'm in trouble. So I signed. It was actually a gift from me to my company. So it was not in their personal name, it was in business name. And that was questionable because the car was still worth way more than what I said the value was. Okay? So be careful with these things. True sales price, very important. Lastly, legality of the object. To be valid and enforceable, a contract must not involve a purpose that is illegal or against public policy. So let's imagine this. Betty, I'm going to give you $1 million to sell Coke. Is that okay?
No,
Why not?
because Coke is illegal.
Really?
You said Coke? Coke.
Yeah.
Oh, not cocaine. Coke as in Coca-Cola.
As in Coca-Cola.
Oh, okay.
Come on. Really?
I'm thinking, yeah, you said it had to be a legal agreement.
Every time. I do this in every class, by the way.
Legal.
So-
Does he look like a dealer?
No, the dealer
You'd be
doesn't have a
surprised.
certain, please. The
You'd be
dealer
surprised.
doesn't have a certain look.
Do I look like CIA? I mean, I'm sorry. So,
I look like a,
Betty. So what happens is, depending on the type of Coke, you are correct. Depending on the type of Coke, I do this on purpose. Depending on the type of Coke, it is illegal. But if I'm talking about Coca-Cola, right? Because we never go to the restaurant and say, hey, can I get a Coca-Cola? No. We 99.9% of the times we say Coke. All right, and they go like, we have Pepsi, is that okay? I'm like, no, I said Coke. I didn't say cola. Coke, right? Anyway, depending on the type of Coke, it is legal. If it's the other one that you were talking about, cocaine, because I didn't say it, you said it, just saying, right? And that's illegal, okay? So $1 million to sell Coke, illegal. Is it a valid contract?
no.
No. Now, if you guys notice, there's no other points here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Competent parties, offering acceptance, consideration, and legal purpose. Does it say signature anywhere? Does it?
It could be written or oral, so
Absolutely. So a valid contract may be oral or written. So a signature is not an essential element of a contract. So if you see a question in the state exam, it might say all these are essential elements to a valid contract except. If it says signature, that's the except. But most people go like, oh, signature is a requirement. No, if it's in writing, yes. But if it's an oral contract, no. So if they keep broad like that, they don't say if it's oral or written, then a signature is not an essential. You guys got it? So it's how you read the question. Very important. Now, parole evidence rule, however, states that a written contract takes precedence over oral agreements or promises. Written contracts take precedence over oral agreements or promises. So, Betty, I offered you $1 million to sell Coke, the right kind of Coke. And you got really excited because you were about to make $1 million. But when I put it on paper, I forgot a zero. You're so excited, you just see one and a bunch of zeros, and he's thinking of $1 million. You know how we speed read, right? And you just signed that document. Betty, how much do I owe you for selling Coke? Coca-Cola. Just made it clear.
you forgot a zero.
Uh-huh.
And is it
Out of $1
higher
million,
or lower?
I forgot a zero, not higher.
Oh, okay.
That's
So
how I had it.
the contract is incomplete, it becomes voidable because it's not what we told you.
Why? Written contract takes precedence over oral agreements. I put it in writing, you signed it.
Well, it can make it bind, you can be bind to it because of the fact that you signed and you agreed, but you just didn't check the number, so you end up getting paid less. So it is a valid contract,
So how much do I owe you now?
what you put on paper.
Which is $100,000 versus $1 million. Big difference.
So go with what you put on paper versus.
Absolutely. I can promise whatever. I mean, who's married? I'm just kidding. Bad joke. All right, moving forward. Right before marriage, everybody's like, yeah, we're going to do all this together, 50-50, and I'm going to be there to love you and support you. 2 minutes later, come on, divorce.
It's infection because you promise so much
Right.
to another party, and then later on I see them fighting on the street. And,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, fighting might be healthy, depends. Some relationships, I see couples that fighting is part of their nature. They have to fight in order to survive.
It's kind of like
No, it's just like fighting.
not looking at someone and judging them and assuming that they're a drug dealer by just a look, or just listening to what someone says versus what they wrote. So I guess we can't use judgment, try not to prejudge any.
Correct, but look how she did. It's like a drug dealer by the way they look, and she's pointing at me. It's like you cannot say that they're not a drug dealer just by the way they look. Like, I felt attacked here.
No.
Betty, come on.
Come on, I know.
I mean, it goes like, does you look like a drug dealer? You go like, you can't say just because of the way you look.
This shipment is in tonight.
She
Stop.
said
All right.
like this. Yeah.
By the dock at 7 p.m. All right, anyway.
Listen, look at your contracts.
Correct. Whatever's in writing takes precedence over oral agreements or promises. Now, statute of frauds. New Jersey statute of frauds states that a contract for sale of real estate and any lease for more than 3 years must be in writing and signed in order to be enforceable. So if it's a real estate transaction, must be in writing, okay? Now, there are exceptions, because every rule has exceptions or exemptions, right? So in 1996, New Jersey statute of frauds was changed.
Here, but not here.
Did you bring breakfast for us?
No, I'm not gonna eat it.
So you're late? You bring food?
So
You're listening to me?
Yes,
As you walk
here, but
in?
not here. I love it.
Now you have them online?
That's wonderful.
Oh, is it the Facebook or?
See, this is the power of what I'm doing. She was listening to me on the way here.
I don't think she
That's good at least.
That's right, yeah.
She only turned it on right now because I saw. But anyway, it was just to look good at walking in. I was listening. It tells me how many people are watching.
That's on Facebook?
Facebook, well, it's linked to YouTube. So if you're in the Facebook group, you click on it, and what we're saying right now is live.
Who's the Facebook group?
Ah, see?
I'm
That's why I needed to talk to you after the class, so I can add you. So a Facebook group is where people get together on Facebook. Now we have a private group for the class, so that you have access to all the videos, all the resources right in the Facebook group. And you get to pretend that you're listening to me as you walk into the class with food. All right, name please. It's right there. It's right there in front of you. You're not going to use the same?
Oh,
No, I'm just kidding.
I can use it.
It's a joke. I'm kidding.
No,
Too much work.
can. Yeah.
I know. One thing you guys gotta learn about me is that you will suffer in my hands. I'm always picking on somebody. Always. And people come back, I don't know why. All right. So, in 1996, you ready? So in 1996, the New Jersey statute of frauds was changed so that it also allowed oral contracts to be enforced where there is clear and convincing evidence that the buyer and seller had agreed orally on the exact real estate to be transferred, the nature of interest to be transferred, the existence of the agreement, and the identity of the transferee. So Betty, you could potentially go after the difference, because orally we made an agreement, and then in writing, I altered that agreement. So if we have clear and convincing evidence, even though we have something in writing now, if we have clear and convincing evidence that I owe you $900,000, that difference, you could fight for it, right? So if you have witnesses, if you have anything that shows that my intention was to give you $1 million or more than what I gave you on paper, stuff like that, right? Whatever is admissible in court. So oral contracts could be enforced. This is an exception from the statute of frauds. Now, while licensees should be aware of this situation, it would be extremely risky to rely on the validity of oral contracts for the sale or long-term lease of real estate. To do so will be inviting litigation. Therefore, a real estate broker's authorization must be in writing and signed for either a sale or lease transaction, whether the broker is acting on behalf of the seller, the buyer, the landlord, or the tenant. So again, if it's a sale or long-term lease, it must be in writing. Okay, you got to remember that. There's different types of contracts. We have expressed or implied contracts, unilateral or bilateral contracts, executory or executed contracts, and then we have valid, unenforceable, voidable, and void. Okay? Let's start with express or implied contracts. You guys can highlight as I read. Actually, as I explain. So Just highlight that portion right there. And as I explained, expressed or implied. So when you guys sign up for this class, the agreement that you signed, the application that you signed, the registration that you signed, clearly states they need to do 75 hours. Okay? The agreement clearly states that you must be 18 years of age or older, and of sound mind, of course. It clearly states also, as you have in your notebook in the very first page as well, it says that you have to pass a background check. These things are expressed. It clearly states that using your phone in class will void our agreement. Therefore, just letting you guys know, I'm not liable to anybody if you guys don't pass. All of you have touched the phone at one point, so I'm good. All right, it's a joke, but it is there. It is stated, all right, even though I don't enforce it as much, but it is stated, no phones. This is called expressed contract. Now, what is implied? It is implied that you get here on time. It is implied that you're paying attention. It is implied that when you go home you study. It is implied that you can follow the simple instructions or things that you should do. Does that make sense? For you to be able to pass. So expressed is whatever is detailed, either verbally or in writing in the registration. What is implied is the actions you should take towards something. Does that make sense? Expressed or implied contracts. You guys good? Any questions here? Okay, great. Next we have bilateral and unilateral contracts. Lateral means side. Bi means two, uni means one. So we're talking about one-sided contracts or two-sided contracts. Meaning, either both parties must perform or do something at the same time, or one party is waiting for the other to take action before he or she can take action. Does that make sense? So bilateral, both parties promise to do something. One promise is given in exchange for another. So buyer and seller, as an example, one promises to sell, and the other one promises to buy. Shaisha, repeat the last thing you said. So the last thing you said. I'm repeating. I don't know exactly what it is. Could you type and I'll repeat? So, as I was saying, there's bilateral, like a seller sells, buyer buys, but both of them must take positive action towards the common goal, which is the sale. Does that make sense? Both must take action. All right. I'll repeat that in a second. As far as unilateral contracts, is one-sided agreement whereby one party makes a promise to induce a second party to do something. The second party is not legally obligated to act, however. If the second party does not comply, the first party is obligated to keep the promise. Here's an example. An offer of a reward is an example of unilateral contract. Because under this agreement, a law enforcement agency offers a monetary payment or reward to anyone who can aid in the capture of a criminal. So, I'll do this if you'll do that. It says only if someone does aid in the capture, it is the reward to be paid. So we don't call and say, hey, I'm about to witness a crime. Where's my money? You got it? You'll go, hey, I just witnessed a crime. This was the person, right, that I saw. And if that person is captured, here's your reward. So you got to do something in order for the other party to do something else. Does that make sense? All right, so that's the difference between unilateral and bilateral. Now, Shaisha was asking about expressed or implied contracts. So let me just rewind a little bit. The difference between expressed or implied. Expressed is we're detailing, either verbally or in writing, what we need to do. Okay, or what you need to do, depending on the parties, right? Implied is what you should do. Okay, I don't have to tell you what you should do. It should be more common sense. So I gave you the example that if you're in class, you should be paying attention. If you're studying, that's great. right? If you're not studying, then you're not doing what's implied to do with this contract. Does that make sense? So expressed, again, 75 hours. You gotta do 75 hours. I also mentioned you're entitled to miss 1 day. That's expressed. Okay? If you do miss that 1 day, I give you guys the option of watching from home that 1 day. You don't have to, but it's implied that you should. Does that make sense? So it's not an obligation, but it's implied that you should catch up from home. All right? All right, Shaisha. Great. Next. Next, we have executed and executory contracts. Executed and executory contracts. The term executed simply means we're done. So if you guys want to write above it, we're done, we closed. That's what it is. Done, closed. Right above executory, I want you to write pending. So above executed, you're going to write done or closed. Above executory, you're going to write pending. And I'll explain right now. So an executed contract is at the end. But let's say I put a contract to purchase today. Right? I mean, me and you, I'm selling, you're buying. Right? And we said that this contract must close 90 days from now. Okay? During these 90 days until closing, the contract between us is executory, meaning it's pending certain actions until closing. When we get to the closing, this contract is executed, finished, completed, done. You guys got it? So executory, pending. Something still needs to be done or remains to be done. Executed, finished, completed, closed, money. Got it? Yes? There's also a second meaning to the term executed as it applies to contracts. Bless you. An executed contract can be a signed contract. A fully executed contract will be one that was signed by all parties. So if I have a blank contract, does it mean anything? No. But once the buyer signs, it's an executed contract. Once the seller signs, it's a fully executed contract. The terms of the contract, executory as we mentioned, but the document itself is executed because it's fully signed. Please feel free to ask questions. This is the only chapter we're doing today, so ask questions if you need. No? All right. Validity of contracts. A contract can be described as valid, void, voidable, or unenforceable depending on the circumstances. A valid contract contains all essential elements and is binding on and enforceable by both parties. Before we move forward, can you guys tell me what are the, without reading, please look at me, without reading, can you guys tell me what are the essential elements of a valid contract? The essential elements of a valid contract, things you need to make it valid.
Oh, I'm thinking, how many things did you say, Slippy? I know they need to be, they have to, both parties have to agree together.
Okay, so offer and acceptance.
Offer and acceptance. Then they also have to both sign this contract.
Sign is not an essential element. You said it could be oral.
Yeah. Oh,
So it's not essential. Offer and acceptance, we got that. Perfect. There's 3 more. What are they? Without looking at the book.
Agree to the contract.
That's offer and acceptance.
The consideration?
Consideration, exchange of value. What else?
Love and affection.
That's consideration, exchange of value.
well, they gotta have proof of that money.
For love and affection?
I mean, to make sure they can have this contract. You know, they need to have-
Son, do you love me? If not, I'm not putting you on this contract. Gotta have proof of that. No. I know what you're saying.
In agreement.
But no, that's still offer acceptance, that's still consideration. There's two more missing.
Must be an adult.
Must be competent party, legal adult in sound mind. And
Oh,
lastly,
yeah, you're right.
oh, I know I'm right.
Yes.
And lastly, I give you an example. You're the one that went to the wrong side of the street. What was it?
Legal.
Legal purpose, right? These are the four essential elements. Now do me a favor and look to the left of your book. The left on your book. What do you have there?
Competent parties, offer acceptance.
All right, this is just to make a point. From one page to another, you guys forgot everything. This was just to make a point. If you do not study, I can guarantee you, you will fail. Take at least 15 minutes a day. Because if in 5 minutes you lost it, imagine when you go home or go to work or get distracted. Okay? So make sure you always review the chapters you covered. Okay? Was that good or what? Every time. And in the previous version of this book was the previous page. So it was even tougher because you couldn't look to the left. It was the previous page. You have to flip the page. Here it's right next to you. We are here, right? And you forgot what's right here. Now, don't feel bad. It's pretty normal. Happens to everybody. In a little bit over 4 years teaching this exact same course. Every single class suffers from the same disease. Okay? It happens. It's normal. It's a lot of information at once. Okay? So again, don't feel bad. Now, to be valid, it must contain the four essential elements: competent parties, offer and acceptance, consideration, and legal purpose. These are the four essential elements to be valid. So that means that a void contract is missing at least one. So, if it was the wrong kind of Coke, was it a valid contract? Betty?
If it was missing one,
If it was the wrong kind of Coke, would it be a valid contract?
Avoid? No.
It'll be void contract because it's not a legal purpose, right? If there is no exchange of value, no consideration, if it's just me, and nothing to you, it's a void contract as well. If I'm not of sound mind, it's a void contract as well. You guys got it? If we don't agree to the terms, I said that. If I offer, you don't accept, it's a void contract. Simple. So a valid one contains all the elements, a void one is missing at least one. Next. Voidable contract. You guys remember when I said that if my son is part of the contract, he can do what? Change his mind. Absolutely. So when he reaches the age of 18, what can he do? He can rescind, disaffirm, or disaffirm the contract. Yes. Okay. Unenforceable contract. Also seems on the surface to be valid. However, neither party can successfully sue the other to force performance. An unenforceable contract is said to be valid between the parties because if they both desire to go through with it, they can do so. So let me explain a little bit better.
it's okay.
$5. So let me explain a little bit better. There's an example here. Jason may have been drunk when he agreed to buy Robert's property. May. We don't know. Some people with half of a cup of wine, they're gone. Other people got to bring the whole case of wine. or the barrel, and they're still good, right? But because Jason was not a competent party at the time that he signed, the contract is not enforceable, right? I cannot sue you to proceed. But there's nothing from stopping them from complying with the terms. So if when Jason sobers up, he still wants to go through with it, with the purchase, and Robert still wants to sell, then the contract is valid between the parties. So even though they were not competent parties at the time of signing, next day, or whenever they sober up, if they say, wait a minute, Robert, did I really sign something to buy your house? And Robert goes like, yes, you did.
Yeah.
Well, do you still want to go through with it? And Robert says, yes, we're good to go. It's valid between the parties. But if Jason says, oh man,
I was drunk.
No.
I'm sorry, man, I was not in the right state of mind, and I got excited, you were selling, and I love your house, and I don't even have 2 cents in the bank.
You were selling
Right?
and half of it.
So can Robert sue Jason? No.
No, because he
You
was
guys got
under
it?
the influence, he was saying he wasn't competent.
Correct. So simple as that.
Who's
You guys got it?
Jason and drink Robert.
Who gave the drinks to Jason?
Rob Mr. Dikinsky.
Rob, okay, don't say that. We lied. I'm just kidding. So now you guys know how he's the top salesman in New Jersey.
I found it out now.
You found out now. Just making a point out there. That was Hamid. It wasn't me. Just saying. Rob, I'm sorry. Guess what? Tomorrow Hamid is going to join this team. He's going to go, hey Rob, I heard we can get drunk doing contracts.
Yeah.
I don't even drink, but it's fine. Let's go.
I wanted to be the number one.
That's
in the
it.
state of Jersey.
That's it.
Found the trick.
So, with that being said, these people from Pakistan, man. Unbelievable. All right. With that being said, undue influence. I mean, look at this. Undue influence and duress. Contracts signed by a person under duress, that means force, or undue influence, being taken advantage of, are voidable, meaning may be canceled by such person or by a court. Extreme care, please underline this. Extreme care should be taken when one or more of the parties to a contract is elderly, sick, in great distress, or, could you read that last one? I mean,
Your extreme care should be taken when one or more of the parties to the contract is elderly, sick, and great distress,
or
or under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
given by Hamid.
Yes, given by Rob.
All right. Okay. All right. So this is very important, guys. You can stop right there. This is very important, guys, because people that are losing their homes, for instance, in great distress, they're losing their homes. They might feel that you took advantage of them when you tried to help them sell. So you got to be careful on your tactics to help them sell. Some realtors really don't care. Hey, you're going to lose your home? Let's save your credit. Then they're like, like this. You're going to lose your home anyway. Let's save your credit. Sell now. Short sale and we're good. Now, because you're getting a commission out of it, your approach should have been different. Which is, hey, have you tried to come up with a resolution with the bank? There's something called loan modifications. Call the bank. You should be able to negotiate with them. Right? If that doesn't work out, I'm here to help you with a short sale. Does that make sense?
Yes.
First, them, then you.
They work with you.
Some realtors don't care. They're like, hey, you're going to lose it anyway.
No. Bank will
Sell
work
now.
with you.
Not all the times, but yes. One of my businesses is helping people stay in their homes, and banks don't always want to help.
No. When you tell them, hey, go for bankruptcy, do whatever you want.
And banks still don't help sometimes.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
But at least you help somebody not have that burden on their credit. That's what bankruptcy will be about. But we'll talk about that in chapter 13. Now, we started this chapter with this, and I'm ending this section with this. To be valid, every contract, please highlight, underline, stars, arrows, bubbles. To be valid, every contract must be signed as a free, voluntary act. of each party. Free voluntary act of each party. Got it? Cannot force anybody into anything. Now, performance of contract. What does it mean, performance of contract? Before you guys start highlighting, come back to me for a second. What does it mean, performance of contract? If I'm a buyer, I'm looking to buy. If you're a seller, you're looking to sell. So what do you think the performance of the contract is?
Prepared.
No. Accomplishment of the terms of the contract. Performance of the contract means we accomplished the terms of the contract, means we closed. You got it? These are the terms. Perform. Now, one of the things that will be in the contract, as an example, is that we said that 90 days from now, we're going to close on this date. And I'll give you an example. On the 15th, I have a closing. Right? And so that means we're 10 days away. If the seller, they already did, but if the seller did not get the CO, certificate of occupancy, if the seller did not get the CO yet, you guys know more or less how long it takes to get a CO from time of application to the actual certificate? Anybody?
What, about 30
10
days.
business.
To get a CO? Roughly 2 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks. To get a CO. We're 10 days away. If the seller did not get it yet, are we closing on the 15th?
No,
No.
because they can't move it.
That's right. So, here's what happens. The buyer attorney sends a letter to the seller's attorney that says, hey, time is of the essence. Meaning, we're supposed to close by the 15th and you still did not complete what you said you should have completed until this time, right? So, here's what we're going to do with time is of the essence. I'm going to give you an additional 2 weeks. Good faith, right? I'm going to give you an additional 2 weeks. If by the end of those 2 weeks, you still don't have what you're supposed to have, then you are in breach of the contract, and we have no liability on the contract. So if we need to walk away, we'll walk away from the contract with nothing against us, no repercussions. But I still reserve the right to sue you, Mr. Seller, for not doing your part. Because remember, a contract is a bilateral contract. Seller must do something, buyer must do something, both towards the consummation of the goal, which is closing, a sale. You got it? So every time you see performance of the contract, means closing, accomplishing the terms of the contract, closing. Any questions on this? In 3, 2, 1, no. Okay. Assignment and novation. Got a question. Now, Jason was drunk. Robert was most likely drunk with him, right? Then they sobered up, and they're like, we're still going to go through this. Then Jason realizes a couple weeks later, wait a minute, I need that down payment money for something else. Make sure your phones are on silent, please. I need the down payment money for something else. It's an emergency. That means I won't have the money to close. Can Robert sue Jason? Absolutely, because Jason is now binding. After 3 business days, the contract is binding. So Jason is bound to this contract. He has to buy. So how can Jason get out without being affected as much? It's called an assignment or novation. So Jason could have said, hey, Mina, I cannot buy this property. Are you interested? And if he has credit, income, all the qualifications where you have cash, let's say, right? Can he take over The answer is yes, subject to the approval of the seller. But an assignment transfers the rights. So Mina is now the rightful purchaser of Jason's property. I'm sorry, of Robert's property instead of Jason. Does that make sense? So he switched from Jason buying to Mina buying. You guys good with this? Yes? No? Maybe?
Yeah.
Say yes, everybody, or say no, everybody?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
something, maybe?
Yes, Rob can do anything.
Nancy?
Well, they don't look at, the other things that come with it, it's just his finance and the qualifications of him having the.
No, he has to be pre-approved. Exactly the same way.
Okay,
That's mainly the requirement for a buyer is getting pre-approved. Everything else doesn't matter.
so he goes through the same thing, but in a short amount of time.
Correct. That's pretty much it. I mean, getting pre-approved,
Yeah.
guys, is a couple hours.
Yeah.
As long as you provide all the paperwork, it's a couple hours. Then it'll go into underwriting for risk assessment, but to get pre-approved, it says, hey, he can actually take over. It's a couple hours. Everything else is the process. It's part of it. Appraisals again and all that transfer.
So instead of the other person owning it, he will be the owner.
Mhm. So instead of Jason buying Robert's property, Mina's buying Robert's property. But the contract did not fall through. I just assigned my rights to purchase. I assigned my rights to purchase to Mina. You guys understand? By the way, this is commonly referred to as wholesaling. If you ever heard that on the news, how to flip contracts versus flipping houses, stuff like that. Wholesaling, that's what this is.
Would that be the same? Sometimes we see it on TV. And let's say, for instance, you are a service provider and you accept an insurance policy from someone and you use a insurance processor. So
Okay, I'm listening.
I then assign the insurance processor to sign an assignment with them to take on the policy to process it and get the money, and they pay me upfront.
Okay, that's an assignment, yeah. And assignments of contract is exactly that, to transfer rights. It could be for real estate, it could be for insurance, it could be for a bunch of other things. So assignment, that's an AOB, assignment of benefits.
So that's the same like when they have, they tell people if you have a large lottery, come to this place and they'll pay you the money, and I guess you're assigning it to
Absolutely.
them, and then they will get the money.
That's what I'm saying. So yes, that's the same thing. It's an assignment of rights or transfer of rights or duties in the contract. Absolutely. It happens in everything. Remember, some of this stuff is general contract law. An assignment can happen with almost everything. Collection companies, they do that all the time. It goes from a collection company to a collection company to a collection company to, I'm sorry?
Like you could have a bill with Sprint, but Sprint then sells it to AU Collections.
AAA collections.
Yeah, and then AAA call them.
Yeah, and then Triple B collections is calling, and then Triple C collection is
Everybody
calling.
sells it.
Yeah, they triple, quadruple, and all that stuff. Yes. Big scam there, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. But yes, they can do that. So here is in the purchase. We just transfer the rights or duties to Mina. So now, Mina, you have the right to purchase, but you also have the duty to purchase. And here's the problem. If he does not purchase, what happens? So Robert can sue Mina and Jason.
Wow.
Both. In the case of assignments, the assignor, which was Jason, maintains secondary liability if the assignee, Mina, breaches the contract.
He said, you know what, I'll bring another one along with me.
Yeah, that's it. I'm good. I'm not going to go down by myself. I'm going to bring him. Come on. Shaisha, yes. Is this just an oral assignment or does it have to be written? For real estate transactions, it must be written. Okay? So just so you know, real estate transaction must be in writing always. That was a very good question. Now, let me ask you something. Do you think Jason wants the liability of Mina not buying and then getting sued?
No,
Nobody wants that, right?
but he should have consulted with him before even jumping into a gun.
Well, this was careful thoughts. It's just that he decided, or he didn't qualify, or life event, just like it happened to me, or it happened to Jason, or it happened to everybody. Life events. I'm not able to afford now. Maybe the same happened to him. And I'm going to explain something in a second of why wholesaling is so dangerous to investors. So, if Jason did not want that type of liability, he could have done something called novation. Instead of assignment, it's a novation. Nova means new. Nova means new. So what we're really saying is, we're canceling the contract between Robert and Jason, and there's a new contract between Robert and Mina. So now, is Jason liable? No, because our old contract is done. It's a brand new contract with new parties, and that's called the novation of the parties. You got it? Brand new. This is a way to avoid liability. In case of novation, the old contract no longer has any force. So, just want to make a quick reference. If you guys heard those flip that house or flip this house or flip New Jersey or whatever programs out there, I'm not saying they're not good. All right, some of them are actually great. Like Fortune Builders is a great program. All right, expensive, but it's a great program. And for the people that don't have enough reserves, it becomes a scam. And I say this because everything is a scam when somebody is hurting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a great program, but if they take $20,000 or $30,000 away from you for mentorship, and you don't do anything with it, oh, it's a scam and this and that, right away. That's what you'll do. I'm not saying it is good. I'm not saying it is bad. This one particularly, I can tell you that it is a good program, but they jam-pack so much information into 1, 2, or 3 days. So much information that when they talk about wholesaling as an option to get into real estate, and this is how they advertise it when they're talking about this stuff, because I have a similar program. When I teach this, step 1 to real estate investing is wholesaling. Step 2 is buying, fixing, and flipping. And step 3, which is long-term, is the buy and hold. These are the 3 steps to be successful in real estate. But step 1, wholesaling, which is what they teach, is, hey, all you have to do is find a great deal, put it under contract with little to no money.
That's what it says. Yeah.
Right? Just like that. Right? Unbelievable.
There's no money.
It's like I wrote it. With little to no money, you can get into this real estate transaction. And then you flip that contract to somebody else, so you assign it to Mina. Mina buys it and gives you a $5,000 check for those rights to buy.
And then I put a stamp on it. Oh, yes, I did it.
That's
I'm
it.
successful. That's it. Look at this guy. And yes, look at this check right here.
But you know what?
Trap.
It's not a trap. It's true. That's the problem.
But it's not for
I teach
everyone.
this. It's the problem. It is for everyone. It's how they teach that is not for everyone. Understand, not everybody, like the way they do is like big events. And like, hey, give me $30,000 and you're going to have hands-on training. Right? If you don't have that, give me $5,000 and you have access to the online stuff and a call once in a while. If you don't have that, give me $1,000 and just get the online stuff. And some people dip into their reserves, the $20,000 they have or $30,000 they have. They pay for the mentor, but they're not in the period in their life where they can really focus on this. So technically, they wasted $30,000. You guys understand what I'm trying to say? So it is possible. I teach this. I've been doing this for 15 years. When I started in real estate, I started flipping, so wholesaling, leases with option to buy. So that was rent to owns. That's how I started. It is possible. I can tell. I'm living proof. I'm right here. It is possible. It's just how it's taught to certain people, or the way it's taught to certain people. That's the problem.
Without getting hurt.
Without getting them hurt. So it's a lot, like I said, these events, there's a lot of jam-packed information. And then as soon as you get out of it, you're like, huh, this is easy. They told me it was just 1, 2, 3 steps. Our simple 3-step system to flipping real estate. You've heard that on the radio, right? 3 steps. And it is true. There's only a couple steps. But there's contingencies in between. Like you don't flip, like Jason doesn't flip a contract to Mina that needs to get pre-approved. I want to find out if Mina has cash. That's the type of buyer I want to wholesale to. Because I'm eliminating the loan approval contingency. Does that make sense? These are things that they don't say right there and then. And you get out of that event, and you see the steps, and you skip the steps, because you got this. It's as easy as putting on the contract and flipping somebody else that wants it. But he needs to get pre-approved, as an example. What if he doesn't? You lose a contract. And I'll tell you right now, there's a property I went to see in Elizabeth last week. It's a 2-family with a business underneath. The wholesaler needed to close by the 6th, tomorrow. This was last week. It needs to close by tomorrow. And I'm looking at the property. What he said as a repair cost was nowhere near what it needs. He said, oh, $40,000 is fixed. So buy this property for X amount, $40,000 to fix, after repair value is X, and we'll talk about this another time. And I looked at it. No. Air conditioning alone is going to be almost $40,000 to fix because they stripped everything. It was a bank-owned property. So now he's stuck with a contract that he cannot flip because the construction cost is way too high. And by the time you purchase and build, the property is not going to be worth much more than what you purchased and built. For you to invest in real estate, you want to have returns, right? So that deal was a bad deal. Why? Because they didn't analyze it properly. And I can give you a bunch of calculators. There's a bunch of stuff that you find online. Calculators, how to figure out if the deal is good. Bunch of calculators. I have some calculators, spreadsheets, that it's so confusing, and I've tried them all. So you can bring in anything you want. I've tried them all. It can be so confusing that I wonder how these people are selling a program for people to learn how to invest in real estate. Their calculator alone is enough for somebody to quit real estate. You don't know what to put here, to put there. It looks like the number is right, but then you forgot contingencies. Once you put these contingencies, it's not a good deal. Most people just put basic stuff and then, 70% of the value. That's a great deal because I get 30% equity right away. No. All right. So what I'm trying to say here is, be careful these things because we are in a market where there's a lot of wholesalers right now. A lot of people that did this. And then they're stuck with the paper, meaning they either have to buy the property or they lose the money that they put as a deposit. You guys understand? There's people at auctions overbidding everybody else, even to a value that doesn't make sense. And then they can't get rid of it.
Just because of the ego hurting, because I wanted this property, how you bid it more than you.
No, and then they think they're going to be able to buy, fix, and flip, and then they realize they can't. So then they try to wholesale, and now, just like I said in my example last week, they purchased so high that there's no cushion to flip to somebody else. So they're stuck, and they're going to lose almost $60,000 that they put as a deposit.
They'll come in auction again.
For somebody else.
Yeah.
Not for them. All right, do you guys understand? Assignment and novation? Yes? I want you to go to default or breach of contract. Shaisha is like, so you have to be very detailed. Absolutely. The steps are simple. Just get as much info as you can. You guys remember yesterday we talked about listings? 3 times I said get as much information as you can, right? Here's the same scenario. You got to be very detailed when you evaluate your properties, yeah. Get as much info as you can. For it to be a slam dunk, it's kind of like you buying the property for $20,000 and you know that anything you put there is going to be worth way more. So you can definitely tear it down and you'll be able to make money. Does that make sense? Some deals out there are sight unseen. What does that mean? You cannot go inside the house.
Yeah, from outside. You can.
From the outside. So again, if that property is $20,000, I'll buy it. If it's $200,000, unless it's like a 10-unit apartment building,
You don't know.
I'm not getting in because you don't know what's inside.
And what's it going to cost you with the construction?
Yep.
It's not that easy.
Exactly.
It sounds very easy. Oh, $80,000, I can renovate everything.
Mm-hmm.
$80,000. When you buy the materials, right there is $50,000-$60,000.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Know your market. Know the cost of stuff when you get in this type of deals. So breach of contract. A breach of contract is a violation. Look what I have in green. Violation of any terms or conditions of a contract without legal excuse. What does that mean? Oh, I fell out of bed and I decided, after I hit my head, I decided not to sell the house anymore. Is that a legal excuse? No. There's issues with the title and therefore I cannot sell. Legal excuse. Make sense? The buyer, I could not get approved for a mortgage. We tried, can't get approved. Legal excuse. You guys understand? Saying, I'm not selling anymore, I'm not buying anymore is not enough. So, if the seller defaults, the buyer has three alternatives. Number one, the buyer may rescind or cancel the contract and recover the earnest money deposit or good faith deposit. Because we put $1,000 towards the contract, that's a deposit, good faith deposit. If seller defaults, that money comes back to me. Number two, the buyer may file a court suit known as specific performance. That means to force the seller to perform the contract or convey the property. Where it says convey, right transfer. Where it says specific performance. You guys remember what I told you performance of the contract was? As it says, it's forcing to sell. Right? So specific performance means seller, you have to sell because it's binding. Okay? So you cannot go, I'm not selling anymore. Because I can sue you and say, yes, you are. Your Honor, it's a binding contract. The seller must sell. And the judge will take sides with me because you're the one backing out. You, the seller. Does that make sense? So every time you see specific performance or performance of the contract means forcing the sale or the terms of the contract. Okay? Third option for the buyer. The buyer may sue the seller for compensatory damages. The buyer may sue the seller for compensatory damages. That means, look, I took money out of my 401k in order to buy your house. There's penalties. There's taxes I have to pay. There's interest I have to pay. Right? Plus, I already told the landlord where I was that I was leaving. So now they want me to pay extra, not the regular value, extra to stay a little longer. Does that make sense? So I am going to sue you for compensation on the fact that I've done these things and you're the one backing out of the deal, not me. So these are the three options for the buyer. What if it's the seller, what if it's the buyer that backs out of the deal? The seller has the same three options plus one. Right here. The same three options. The seller can also sue, no, you are buying, right? But this option here, look what it says. The seller may declare the contract forfeited, and the right to forfeit may be provided for in the contract, and according to the terms of the contract, the seller may be entitled to retain the earnest money and all payments received from the buyer as liquidated damages. Where it says liquidated damages, I want you to write settlement. Because what is a liquidation? We're going out of business, we settle for whatever comes in, right? We're selling cheaper, right? Yes? Good morning.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, just agree with me. Say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure you guys are alive. So that's what it is. Settlement. So you guys remember, the buyer put $1,000 for the contract. A couple days after attorney review, the buyer put another $4,000. So a second deposit, good faith deposit. What's the total? $5,000. If the buyer backs out of the deal, the seller can keep the $5,000 as liquidated damages. Okay? The seller keeps the good faith deposit because that's what it is. Just like we'll talk about tomorrow, just like a lease, a secure deposit is if you default, tenant, I keep your secure deposit. Here is if you default, buyer, I keep your good faith deposit. Same concept. You got it? Any questions? All right, on the right-hand side. Statute of limitations. We've talked about this several times before, so hopefully it will make sense now. It says New Jersey allows for a specific time limit of 6 years during which parties to a contract may bring legal suits to enforce their rights. Any party who does not take steps to enforce his or her rights within the statute of limitations may lose those rights. The 6-year period applies to contracts, foreclosures, mortgages, and cases of fraud. So you guys remember we read 6 years several times? You got to keep records for 6 years. Why? Because you could get sued in any real estate transaction within 6 years. So you think you can sleep at night on that deal that you screwed up, that you committed fraud? They forged signatures and stuff like that? No. But guess what? You can tell the seller the same thing. Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller. The buyers have up to 6 years to sue you. So if there's anything they need to tell me now. I need to know every detail about this house. Because if they find out later, it's on you. I'll get sued, but you will too. Does that make sense? And vice versa. If the buyer commits fraud, and it goes back to the seller, affects somehow, it's 6 years. So any real estate transaction, 6 years. You got it? Lawsuits to recover real property have a 10-year statute of limitations in New Jersey. So if you lose the property for whatever reason, part of a contract, whatever, you can sue to get the property back. But you got 10 years. I'll explain it better when we get to chapter 20. All right, preparation of documents. You guys already know this from the first chapters, right? Or you should remember this, that we are allowed to prepare contracts, standard contracts, only on 1 to 4 family residences and vacant single lots. Right? You guys remember this? What if it's a 5 family or if it's commercial, industrial, or anything like that? Can we prepare those contracts? No, attorneys do. What we prepare is letter of intent, right? So as it says right here, to avoid the unauthorized practice of law, brokers and their salespersons may not circle or underline, double underline, triple underline. You may not draft commercial leases, option agreements, sales contracts of tracts of vacant land, commercial property, or industrial property. When it says tracts, we're talking about several lots or big lots of land. If it's a single vacant lot for 1 house or 2 houses, or a 2-family or 3-family or 4, just 1 single lot, we can. If it's something that will involve multiple lots, we can't. You got it? Next, New Jersey requirements. It says all offers, contracts, or leases prepared by licensees must indicate the business relationship that the firm has with respect to the parties named in the document. All offers, contracts, or leases prepared by licensees must indicate the business relationship that the firm has with respect to the parties named in the document. Which document represents the types of business relationships we can enter into?
Contracts.
Mm-hmm.
The agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
The, based upon the type of business that we're,
I want you guys to go to page 34 and 35 real quick. Page 34 and page 35.
sell the contract, the lease, all of that.
Go to page 34, page 35. Tell me what it says on top of those two pages.
You must read these pages.
Please read me, or let me translate that to must read these pages. Are the tops folded? Because I asked that you guys folded the top. Because you got to go back to it. I said to mark it somehow. Did everybody read it? Not yet. If it says, please read me on top in big letters, do you think it's important?
CSR, yeah.
And you know what I said that day on Tuesday, last Tuesday? You know what I said? I said that in a week from now, I'm going to be asking you these questions and nobody has read it. You remember that? I said that because I know how it is. Make sure you guys read that. Types of business relationships we can enter into: seller's agent, buyer's agent, disclosure agent, or transaction broker. Okay? Thank you, Shaisha. Yes, CIS. She replied to that. Okay? So very, very important you guys remember. In addition to the CIS, there must be a notice, which is the very first page or cover page of a contract that now reiterates these types of business relationships. So the CIS was a notice up front that says, hey, this is how I could represent you. Now that we're putting a contract together, the cover page is, hey, this is how I'm representing you.
Buyer agent, seller agent, broker, whatever.
Correct. But if you're functioning as a dual agent or a transaction broker, because the broker agent has a monetary interest in the transaction, the buyer could void the contract if this fact is not disclosed. So the buyer must know how I'm representing. If they don't know, they could void the whole contract because you failed to disclose your business representation. Because as a transaction broker, are you representing the buyer? No, just a transaction. And the buyer might say, wait a minute. You either represent me or we're not doing this. You got it? What does it mean, represent me? That means you uphold my best interest first, then yours, then everybody else's. You care for me first. You obey. You hold proper accounting. You're loyal to me first. And you'll disclose everything to me. Cold. You guys remember that? Care, obedience, account, loyalty, and disclosure? That's what it is. So the buyer has the right to say, this is how I want you to represent me.
To the seller?
No, to the agent.
To the agent?
This is to the agent.
Okay.
That's why the notice to the seller and buyer must be the cover of every contract. That's what it says here. Cover of every contract. Okay? New Jersey also requires that the following language appear in exactly this form at the top of the first page of a sales contract. And it says, this is a legally binding contract that will become final within 3. Make sure you circle or underline or double underline, put arrows, bubbles, whatever you got to put. 3 business days. Every contract will become final within 3 business days. Good? What happens during those 3 business days? The rights to consult an attorney, the right to attorney review. What does that mean? That within the 3 business days, an attorney can study the contract, right? And the 3-day period starts, I'm sorry, right here. Funny, I had this highlighted. Okay. Where it says counting time, you count the 3 days from the date of delivery of the signed contract to the buyer and seller. Make sure you highlight that, please. Okay, I just highlighted. In fact, let me put it in green. Put stars next to it. What happened, Lou? Sorry.
You used the wrong color.
Sorry. But it's that important. Okay? Because the time, there will be a question in the state exam. When do you start counting the time? When both parties receive a signed copy. Because me giving an offer, right? Putting an offer, as a buyer, I signed. You telling me, hey, the seller accepted, means nothing. Let me see it. You got it? Next. Within the 3 business days, there must be a notice of disapproval. What does that mean? Attorneys will send a letter to the other attorney and say, hey, cross line 109. Add these terms to line 307. Okay? Under section B or whatever, this is what should be. So within the 3 business days, some action must start of disapproval. Or after the 3rd business days, if nothing started, the contract is final and binding. No changes from there on. You guys got it? So it's not that we conclude attorney review within 3 business days. It must start within 3 business days. The state also requires an equivalent notice on leases. And then it says other required disclosures such as off-site conditions, lead-based paint, and Megan's Law disclosures are considered part of the contract. We talked about all these disclosures before, right?
Yes.
Great. So, federal requirements. The buyer of a residential property constructed before 1978 must be offered in the sales contract a 10-day opportunity to conduct a lead-based paint survey of the property with a right to void the contract if hazardous paint is found. This was chapter 9. You guys remember this? We stopped, we took our time to explain that every contract on every property that was built before 1978 must come with a pamphlet and a statement in the contract that the buyer has the right to protect him or herself from lead-based paint. The seller is not required to test. You guys remember this? But if the seller knows about it, they are required to pass along the information. Please tell me you remember this stuff. You're saying yes just because I'm asking you to say yes?
No, we go yesterday.
Was it yesterday? Just want to make sure. It was so long ago. All right, next page. Contract forms. We're almost done, don't worry. I'm not giving a break today because we're almost done, okay? Plus we started later, making sure everybody got here and people still found a way to get here way later and pretend to be listening to me as they walk in. Anyway, so printed forms are used for all kinds of contracts because most contracts basically are similar in nature. I mean, a single family is a single family, right? A 2-family is a 2-family, and 3 and 4 and so on. And there's so many of them out there that they created standard contracts. Now, 5 families or more, are these common?
No.
Not as much. Commercial, it's a weird thing. So they're not exactly the same. From this building to the other building, they're different. So not as much. But the standard 1 to 4 family and single vacant lots, it's pretty much the same contract. Okay? Minor changes to it. But the problem now is that it raises 3 problems. 1, what to write in the blanks. Don't worry about it. You can go back. We're almost done. Right. All right. What to write in the blanks. Number 2, what printed matter is not applicable to a particular sale and can be ruled out by drawing lines through the unwanted words. Right? Because there's stuff you don't need, because even though a single family equals single family equals single family, one is located in Newark, where we have a septic system, right? Yes? Public? Private? What do we have in Newark? Sewer system. Public. And the other could be located in West New Jersey, where they might have private septic systems. Does that make sense? So now there's stuff that needs to be crossed out in the contract, because even though single family is a single family, some items in the contract do not apply based on the conditions of the property and the amenities of the property. Also, what additional clauses or agreements called riders are to be added. Why am I saying this? Because if you're buying with an FHA loan, we'll talk about it when we get to mortgages, but if you buy with an FHA loan, then you must add a rider or an addendum or an additional page that says, Mr. Seller, be aware that an FHA does not promise financing until the property appraises. There are certain conditions that your property must meet in order to approve the loan. So it's a rider, it's an additional thing. Does that make sense? If the property was built before 1978, we need a lead-based paint rider. Are you guys understanding this? So these are things that need to be added, and you need to know how, right? Luckily today, everything is on the computer. You click FHA, automatically generates the additional form. Thank God. Because realtors used to forget them all the time. This right here is common sense. All changes and additions usually are initialed by both parties. If changes are made, the rule is that typing takes precedence over printed form, and handwriting takes precedence over type changes. So you guys are writing stuff on your books. Guess what you're doing? Taking precedence over what's written. You're putting your own notes, and now it's even more important than what's in writing. You got it? Listing agreements we covered yesterday. Just highlight the first sentence. Buyer brokerage agreements, we already talked about as well, so just highlight the first sentence. Transaction broker and dual agency agreements, that was chapter 3. We also talked about this, so just highlight. You guys good? Next page. Sales contract. In front of sales contract, I want you to write offer. In front of sales contract, I want you to write offer. Because that's what it is. When they tell you, put it in writing, put an offer. That's what they're asking. Prepare a sales contract. You guys got it? And then it says, I just want you to underline this right here just to, because it might be a question. Depending on the locality, this agreement may take one number of forms and be known as offer to purchase, contract of purchase and sale, earnest money agreement, or binder and deposit receipt. Binder and deposit receipt. So these are just different terms for sales contract. Offers, contract to purchase sale, earnest money agreement, or binder and deposit receipt. All right. Next, we have offer and acceptance. We already covered offer and acceptance, so you guys know what this is. I offer, you accept, great. What if you don't accept? What if you say, hey, I see your terms, but I want to make a change to your terms? let's say, Malek, I'm gonna buy your house. I'm putting an offer of $200,000, but it has to include the drapes. Because I really liked the drapes when I saw the house. I liked your drapes at the house. So $200,000 includes the house and the drapes. And she goes,
No.
no. I'll see your 200 minus the drapes. Okay? Anytime there is a change to the terms of the contract, anytime there's a change to the terms of the contract, it constitutes a counteroffer. And a counteroffer is, in effect, a rejection. So I want you to write somewhere there in big letters, rejection. So she just rejected me, my offer, right? Guess what happens now? When she countered by giving me, hey, 200,000 minus the drapes, do I have to accept it? No. So I'll walk away, and she goes like, no, Bruno. Okay, I'll include the drapes. Let's just close. Do I have to accept it?
No.
No, because you rejected my first offer. It's done. So that's what you have to remember. I put an offer, you countered, but then you went back to my original offer. We don't have to continue. Because the moment you countered, what did you do again? Reject. You got it? Very, very important. Every time there's a counter, there's a rejection. So the party that was countered is no longer binding.
Like you may put in an offer, they reject your offer, and that's it, the contract is over then.
No obligation from there on. If they call you back, hey, are you still interested? Yeah.
At a higher price, they can offer a different price.
Absolutely. Counters. We can counter all day, and that is literally a rejection. You guys got it? Okay. Very important to know. Guaranteed to be a question. On the right-hand side, we have earnest money deposit. Earnest money deposit. Earnest money deposit, I want you to write, even though it's written there already, but right above it, I want you to write good faith deposit. Good faith deposit. Every time you see the term earnest money deposit, it's good faith deposit. Or security deposit, if you want to call it as well. In real life, we don't call it security deposit for contracts, purchase contracts. But if you want to put it as a reference in your mind, what it does, then that's what it is. It's like a security. If you default, I keep the money. Okay? So it's customary, but not essential. So it's not mandatory that you give a good faith deposit. So it's essential but not customary for a purchaser to provide a cash deposit, a check, when making an offer to purchase real estate. This cash deposit, commonly referred to as earnest money or good faith deposit, please highlight, underline, put stars, gives evidence of the buyer's intention to carry out the terms of the contract. All you're saying is, I'm serious. I'm serious about this. I want to buy the house. Okay? Because otherwise, I believe, as a seller, I believe that you're putting offers everywhere and seeing which one lands. But how many $1,000 are we going to put out there? Does that make sense? Skip to the next paragraph. It says, earnest money must be deposited by a broker within, it says 5 days, but I want you to write business. Because you got to remember that when you read.
I have a question, with earnest money, because, like, suppose,
Yes.
I saw a little house online, and then I contacted the salesperson, and he says, okay, before I show you the house, I want to sign the contract, and plus, I want you to bring the deposit money.
Before I show the house?
Yeah, I'm serious.
It does happen. I mean, there's crazy people like that.
That's what, because it happens to.
Wait, did you do that? Because I don't
Friend of
call you
mine.
crazy like that.
It happens to a friend of mine, so, because he called me, and then I said, no, it shouldn't be that way.
I had a realtor a few years back, a realtor that worked with us at the previous agency. She got a listing sight unseen, meaning the buyer drives by, if they like it, put an offer, so just like you're saying, and then I'll show the house. Wait, okay, so I'll put an offer, $1. Because until I see it, what is it worth? $1. So it's a nominal fee just to say, hey, here's an offer. After I see it, I'll understand the conditions of the property and I'll be able to put a proper offer. But yes, there's people that will do that. That's crazy.
But it's like okay to do that? Or,
Now, Mr. Salesperson, if you do that, you're not very good at your job.
That's what I'm saying, because what happens...
It's okay to do it.
It's okay to do
It's okay to do it. There's nothing that says you can't do it.
But I believe because you lose a customer like that.
What, the seller?
Yeah.
Fire him or her. You're telling me that I cannot see your house, show a house, take pictures of your house, and still magically come up with an offer?
$1,000 deposit and then plus, sign the contract before you see the house.
Mr. Seller, you're lunatic. I'm out. Right? Of course, don't say that to the seller like that, but
it's not,
try to reason with them.
It's not one agent. Nowadays, there's a couple of agents. They're doing that. And then the broker letting them do that.
If it's a real estate owned property, meaning they're going through foreclosure, sometimes that happens. Foreclosures are different.
Yeah, no, not.
But if it's a regular sale,
It's a regular
regular seller, regular buyer, no. That broker and that
Just from my
realtor.
own knowledge, I wanted to make sure, this is like, hey, what kind of practice they're doing in this.
All right, you guys got this, right? Yeah. You guys already know also, any cash deposit of $10,000 or more must be reported to Uncle Sam. We're good. You guys know this, right?
Yeah, Uncle Sam always wants money.
Absolutely. Do not flip pages. Just go to the next one to the right. You guys remember I said business relationships with the CIS, right?
Yeah.
And then I said there has to be another notice that says I now represent you as sales agent, buyer's agent, disposal agent, or so on.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the cover page for every contract. This is the notice to buyer and seller. Circle notice to buyer and seller.
Highlight or circle?
Whatever you prefer. And look what it says. At number 1, as a real estate broker, I represent seller, not the buyer not the seller, both the seller and the buyer, neither the seller nor the buyer. Got it? So I have to put what I said in the CIS, I now have to put here in the contract.
So, for going through these contracts, it's another course we have to take, or is everything is the same?
Once you see, there's no question how to fill contracts.
Yeah.
So once you start with a brokerage, they're supposed to train you on how to prepare these.
Okay, fair enough.
Luckily for you, if you wind up in a brokerage that doesn't train you, we have a contract preparation course.
Great. Yeah, I know where to come, Mr. Bruno.
We have the solution.
We got the solution. No,
I had to. Look, 3 years ago, I have somebody that was taking the broker's course now, and he vouched in front of the class. 3 years ago, one of my students went to work for an agency down south. So I had no control over it. Down south, I don't even know who they are. He was texting me, Bruno, can you help me prepare a contract? He works at a different agency, and I was still helping him prepare a contract. No interest whatsoever to me, because I don't get paid for transactions that happen outside my office. But I was helping him.
Yes, sir.
So I said, you know what? Let's create a course for these people that are unattended. That's what it is. Course, contract preparation course.
Earn some money.
No, which is good though, because
Yeah.
it's not about the money. Because when you are already knocking at the door, you want to enter the palace. You wanted to make sure you have proper clothes or proper representing everything, so you not feel like fool there when they look at you. Okay, this guy is a fool, or girl is a
But the
fool.
broker have to train you.
Yeah, and she did not know how to prepare a contract.
Not all brokers. Some brokers do one experience.
They want money.
I mean, they
Not
do.
contract.
Some of them, they have to train.
So, right after all those pages, I was just letting you know how it is out there. Some brokerages, they just leave you unattended. Some, they really focus on you. So it goes back to what I was telling you. Look for brokerages that are willing to mentor you.
If
Period.
you make a mistake, it affects them.
Oh, yeah.
So they have to train you. Like,
You
Go
tell
away.
them, because since you did not train me, I'll take 1%. Out of contract.
Good luck.
Make sure you have that in writing, right?
Yeah, put it in
I'm
writing.
sure they're gonna have to hire
or not.
them.
Then they will open
They will
their.
eventually, but.
It says, my commission is a 70-30 split, but for learning how to prepare a contract on my own, put an extra 5% there.
That's it. And then he's, no, I'll teach you.
All right. So, right after all those pages, it says right here, signature of a witness is not essential for a valid contract. The witness is not essential for a valid contract. We already covered this thing, the 1978. You guys got it? On the right-hand side, it says contingencies. Do you see it?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Contingency.
SHA loan. Or
When the purchaser intends to secure an FHA or VA loan, special clauses must be included in the sales contract that provide that the contract may be voided if the property appraises below the sales price. I already told you, that's an addendum, needs to be added to every contract. And I'll talk about it better when we get to FHA, VAs, and so on, okay? When it needs to appraise. Next paragraph says, among common provisions in the subject to section of a contract are the purchaser's needs to secure a specific loan, the purchaser's right to a satisfactory report on the property by a licensed home inspector within a specified few days, because you are entitled, you have the right to inspect the property, unless you waive that right. It's only up to you. Approval of the contract by a family member, again, within a short period of time, or the purchaser's needs to sell a present home before buying the next residence. So, hey, I'm buying your house, but I need to sell mine first. So, the buyer cannot be required to complete the purchase. Put a star next to that, even though it's not in green. But the buyer cannot be required to complete the purchase if any such contingency is not satisfied. Where the purchaser has another home that must be sold first, the seller may insist on an escape clause, also called a kick-out or knockout clause. On the next page, liquidated damages. Do you see it? You guys remember what this is? Liquidated damages is a settlement. Remember? Is where the buyer backed out of the deal and the seller says, hey, I'm keeping your good faith deposit, your security deposit, because you're the one breaching the contract. So I'm keeping your money. Remember that? Cool. At the bottom, look what it says. Please highlight, underline, and put stars. The seller who does choose to keep the deposit as liquidated damages, double underline this, may not sue for any further damages. So liquidated damages is a settlement. If he chose to keep the deposit, you cannot sue the buyer for any more monies. Okay?
Or you don't have to take and sue.
Or you don't take the money and sue for more. Absolutely. Which could cost you more, and then you take less. It all depends. Good?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I love acknowledgement to my questions. All right. Plain language requirement. All it says here is that every contract in New Jersey, because we don't need to have an attorney, every contract must be in plain English, everyday English. Okay? So it's clearly understood by the parties. You'll be able to read the contract and understand everything that's there, supposedly. Okay? Where it says rescission of a contract, don't worry too much about it, because I'm going to give you all these things as we go, or we've spoken about it already. And go straight to option agreements. Where it says option agreements, I want you to write similar to car lease. Similar to car lease. What is a car lease? You rent a car for 3 years, right? And at the end of 3 years, you have an option to do what? To buy. So here, it's the same thing as a house, before the house. You rent the house for an X amount of time, and at the end, you have the option to own it. Yes.
Quick question, but for this one, whenever you do that, whenever you're renting, let's say the rent's $1,000, but then they tell you, you have to rent it for $1,500. Those $500 goes towards.
That's based on your agreement with them. It could be credited towards the down payment, towards the purchase of the property, whatever, or not. In the state of New Jersey, it is required that a portion of their rent goes towards down payment.
And then let's say after
In some states, it's not.
that amount, you don't want to buy it, what happens to that down payment?
Again, it depends on
The agreement?
the agreement. So there's something called option agreement, which might not be refundable. But if that money is credited towards the purchase and you don't buy, then that money at least should be refunded to you. It should. Again, these are strange terms or contracts. So who prepares these? Attorneys. We don't prepare these contracts. Nope. We prepare standard contracts. You're buying, you're selling, cash, loan, period. Option agreements, we don't prepare. Attorneys do. You guys got this? Option agreements is like rent to own, just like your car lease with an option to buy later on. You got it? Great. On the right-hand side on top, we have land contracts. Land contracts, I want you to write similar to car financing. Similar to car financing. Because when you finance a car, when do you get the deed or title? After you finish paying. So in this case, a land contract is not like a regular contract. Because in a regular contract, you close, the house is deeded to you. A land contract or installment sales contract, as it says, right? A land contract is pay me with interest every month, and towards the end, you get the deed. So it says right here, the buyer agrees to give the seller a down payment and pays regular monthly installments of principal and interest over a number of years. The buyer also agrees to pay real estate taxes, insurance, premiums, repairs, upkeep of the property. All that stuff. And then the agreement says, although the buyer obtains possession when the contract is signed, that means I take over now, right? The buyer has equitable title. Equitable title. That means there's money in. It's vested. Equitable title. So the seller does not execute and deliver the deeds to the buyer until the terms of the contract has been satisfied. Again, similar to car financing. This frequently occurs when the buyer has made sufficient number of payments to obtain mortgage loan or pay off the balance due on the contract. Okay? Any questions? No? So these two are agreements between the seller and the buyer. It has nothing to do with the banks. These are private agreements between the seller and the buyer. You guys good?
Yes.
Yes? Summary. We're done. Okay? It's only 12 o'clock. Maybe we should start another chapter.
Ah.
I'll let you guys